Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, we're studying chapter 7 of Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga, and we're about 3/5 of the way through the chapter. And before we start, are there any questions or comments about what we remember reading so far? This isn't a pop quiz, it's just, is there anything that you would like to know or ask or want clarified about what we've studied so far? Okay. As we know, we've come to the part of this talk where the Swami has described the ideal of Vedanta as seeing the divine presence everywhere and in everything. And that if this is done, it transforms Maya from a prison to a kind of, well, there are even singers, the wonderful saintly singers, who describe it as a mansion of mirth. Now that seems inconceivable to us sitting here, I'm sure, but nevertheless, that's what is said. And so we'll pick up Vivekananda here. He says, "It is very easy to talk. From my childhood, I have heard of seeing God everywhere and in everything, and then I can really enjoy the world. But as soon as I mix with the world and get a few blows from it, the idea vanishes. I am walking in the street thinking that God is in every man, and a strong man comes along and gives me a push, and I fall flat on the footpath. Then I rise up quickly with a clenched fist. The blood has rushed to my head, and the reflection goes. The reflection of God is in everything and everyone. Immediately I have become mad." By that he means crazy. Immediately I have become crazy. Everything is forgotten. Instead of encountering God, I see the devil. Ever since we were born, we have been told to see God in all. Every religion teaches that. See God in everything and everywhere. Do you not remember in the New Testament how Christ says so? We have all been taught that. But it is when we come to the practical side that the difficulty begins. You all remember how in Aesop's fables, a fine stag is looking at his form reflected in a lake and is saying to his young one, How powerful I am. Look at my splendid head. Look at my limbs. Look how strong and muscular they are, and how swiftly I can run. In the meantime, he hears the barking of dogs in the distance and immediately takes to his heels. And after he has run several miles, he comes back panting. The young one says, "You just told me how strong you were. How was it that when the dogs barked, you ran away?" "Yes, my son, but when the dogs bark, all my confidence vanishes." Such is the case with us. We think highly of humanity. We feel ourselves strong and valiant. We make grand resolves, but when the dogs of trial and temptation bark, we are like the stag in the fable. Then, if such is the case, what is the use of teaching all these things? There is the greatest use. The use is this, that perseverance will finally conquer. Nothing can be done in a day. Then he quotes from an Upanishad, "This self is first to be heard, then to be thought upon, and then meditated upon." This is Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. The self is first to be heard, then to be thought upon, and then meditated upon. Everyone can see the sky. Even the very worm crawling upon the earth sees the blue sky. But how very far away it is. So it is with our ideal. It is far away, no doubt, but at the same time, we know that we must have it. We must even have the highest ideal. Unfortunately, in this life, the vast majority of persons are groping through this dark life. The vast majority of persons are groping through this dark life without any ideal at all. If a man with an ideal makes 1,000 mistakes, I'm sure that the man without an ideal makes 50,000. Therefore, it is better to have an ideal. And the ideal we must hear about as much as we can, and till it enters into our hearts. And the ideal we must hear about as much as we can, till it enters into our hearts, into our brains, into our very veins, until it mingles in every until it tingles in every drop of our blood and permeates every pore in our body. We must meditate upon it. Out of the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaketh. Out of the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaketh. And out of the fullness of the heart, the hand works too. So, are there any questions or comments? Anything that you'd like to say about this idea of the ideal and how it must be constantly held up before us and how we must grasp onto it?
I agree with him, Brother Shankara. It is better to have an ideal and make 1,000 mistakes rather than not having an ideal and make 50,000. Truly, truly.
And why, Haima, do you think
Because
that the man who is without an ideal is likely to make 50,000 mistakes?
because there's no path without an ideal. There's no path at all. It's just like scattered brain completely. At least if we have an ideal, it's like a perseverance will finally conquer. Yes, if we can sit in meditation, get the discipline of sitting first, then later everything falls in place. Slowly the mantra, slowly the devotion, divinity, everything falls in place. It is definitely, I agree with that. Just the sitting itself, whether it's a 5 minutes or 25 minutes, just start sitting and then slowly everything will work out. I'm an example for that. I've been doing for nearly 20 years. And in the beginning, it was hard, very difficult, just sitting 5 to 10 minutes. And then it slowly, the discipline of sitting makes other things come into our life. Just the
Yes.
discipline of sitting comes other. I'm not perfect yet. I'm still on the bottom of the step, probably on the illumination ladder. So, but still, it works. It does. You can see better.
Yes, the practice of concentration generalizes in one
Exact contemplation, meditation.
And the reason for the ideal is
Yes.
it's like a compass.
Mm-hmm.
If you know where you want to go,
Exactly.
and you have a compass,
That's the self-realization.
and you may make mistakes. You may
no doubt.
you may fall into a ditch.
Yep.
Because you didn't see it coming. But the fact of the matter is, you have the compass. So you get out of the ditch. You say, "Oh, I'll pull out my compass. There. This is the direction I must head."
Yes.
The person without a compass, even though they may have some hazy idea of where they want to go, they'll lose themselves
exactly.
over and over and over.
Truly.
And as Jaime was pointing out, the practice of sitting
just the sit.
Generalizes because the concentration that comes with the practice of sitting, the ability to concentrate that comes, generalizes in our lives. And then, as she says, things begin to fall into place. Not because they weren't already there to fall into place, but we didn't see them because of our lack of ability to concentrate.
That's right. Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Well, thank you, Jaime. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara, this is Somesh.
Yes.
How do we know if our ideals are like correct, or like what if I'm following the wrong ones?
Well, we have all of these scriptures and teachers.
Mm-hmm.
They present the ideal to us.
Okay.
We learn whether the ideal is correct in the same way that one learns how chemistry works by going into the laboratory. And I'll give you an example from my own experience. I've forgotten the names of the ingredients, of course. But when I studied chemistry, actually, I was studying biology. And we went in the laboratory and we put a beaker over the Bunsen burner. We adjusted it to the certain temperature. We put one solution in, and then we put another solution in. We mixed them and we waited till they were fully mixed. And then we put what is called a reagent in. And in an instant, the beaker that had been full of liquid was full of crystals, which was exactly what was said would happen in the chemistry book, telling us how to do this experiment. And of course, it was an example of crystallization, and it was a part of study of digestion and hydrolysis and all this. But that's not the point. The point is that the chemistry book and the teacher, not the chemistry book, the biology book and the teacher gave us this information. Do this, and this will happen. This is precisely what the great teachers tell us. Christ said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all else shall be added unto you." Sri Ramakrishna says the goal of human life is to realize God, to know God. If you do that, he said, if you put that first, then you can hold to that pillar and dance for all you're worth. In other words, live the life of the world as it suits you, because you will have that frame of reference of God realization, God knowledge. So the teachers present us the ideal, and we find out if they are true or not by making the effort to find out if they're true. As Swami Vivekananda pointed out, you can take the chemistry book and you can read it cover to cover, and you can say chemistry, 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 and you still won't know chemistry at all. You'll know only the ideas of chemistry. So you must go in the laboratory and make the effort, as Haima was pointing out. And as Krishna points out in the Gita in the beginning, sour toil at first, and then nectar. So that's how we find out whether the ideal is true or not. By doing what we're told and seeing how it works out.
Mm-hmm.
Could we also say that
We lost you, Divya.
She put herself on
Oh.
mute.
hello?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
could we also say, you said, and then we lost you.
Oh, I said, I'm sorry. Could we also say that the test of a true ideal is, because there are so many false ideals around us. Like, you know, we see, like, we hear a lot of music, we see a lot of images, and they all have an ideal, but it's like we can't follow all of them. But would you say that the test of the truth of an ideal is whether or not it brings you freedom, because it could enslave you to the world?
The ideal must promise freedom, otherwise why bother with it?
Yes.
Well, of course, if your ideal is to become wealthy, if that's your ideal, and there are many people whose ideal is that, then they mix with people who know about the ideas and ideals of making money, and they make money, and they think it's theirs, and that's all well and good for them at that time. But for the spiritual aspirant, I think Swamiji will answer our question now. Is there anything else on this particular point before we go ahead with what the Swami says?
I think our ideal, but Brother Shankara, our ideal should be nirvana, realization of self, going deep into self. Isn't that the ideal that we sit into meditation? It's freedom within self, finding the divinity within self, and nirvana.
That's one way of putting it into language. Haima, you're absolutely right. The Swami has been putting it into Vedanta language, which is transforming Maya into seeing the divine everywhere and in everything. So it's you were talking about the yoga way of putting it into language.
Without seeing,
there's nothing at all wrong with that. It just isn't what the Swami is speaking of here.
sure. But first I have to see the divinity within myself. That's my ideal. Then I can see the divinity in the world, right?
Yes, well, this is the promise. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Brother Shankar.
But
What
you
if
know,
there is
sorry.
sorry? What if there is no like Ramakrishna said that, okay, the purpose of life is to realize God, Jesus said. But I'm saying, what if there is no purpose to life? You define your own purpose. You say, okay, I want to be the richest man. You work for it. I want to be, realize myself, like what my true nature is, or what my true self is. That's your purpose. So I'm saying that you define your own ideal. Isn't that also possible?
Ultimately, yes, Sumesh. Ultimately, yes. If you're able to be that self-determined and avoid any kind of hypocrisy and false piety and all of those things that go along with striking off on your own without the guidance of teachers, then well and good. But I think the Swami was pointing to this when he said, the person with an ideal, they'll make 1,000 mistakes. The person without an ideal, it isn't that they won't make any progress, but they'll make many more mistakes. And he nominated 50 times that amount.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the truth is completely contained within you. There's no two ways about it. How
Mm-hmm.
to find it. Haima has been talking about one way. Divya was gesturing toward another. So the Swami is saying, take this ideal of Vedanta and work with it. And then see if it doesn't produce something for you.
Okay.
But of course, as Sri Ramakrishna said to the gentleman from Calcutta, gentlemen several from Calcutta who heard that the master was preaching renunciation to their sons and were concerned that their sons would be turned away from the life that they had hoped for them, came to the master, and their spokesman said, tell us, why should we not enjoy the world? And Sri Ramakrishna said, go, enjoy the world. I have no objection. But when you are sick of it, return to me. I have the cure. And his cure was a prescription of an ideal. I gestured toward a little bit of it. You can find it described in wonderful detail in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. What he means by knowledge of God is the purpose of human life. But there are many ways to define that. And Vivekananda, while he was in London, published a tract, as they were called in those days. And the title of the tract was Each Man His Own Sect, S-E-C-T. And it was exactly what you were gesturing towards, Somesh. But most of us need the grounding of the great teachers and perhaps even a guru to get us started in the right direction and hand us a compass.
Brother Shankara,
Yes.
I think we all think that we can concentrate, and we are concentrating. But if you persist in your search, eventually you can't recognize that you are not concentrating, and you don't know how to concentrate until you actually are able to do it. Once you accomplish it once, then you can return to it.
Very well said, Robert. Very, very well said. Most people think they know what the word concentration means.
Right.
And they really have no idea.
Right.
They have no idea what one-pointedness of mind means, of being able to hold one thought for even 12 seconds. And so it's, which is the definition of concentration according to yoga, according to Patanjali. The definition of concentration is being able to hold the same thought or the same image or the same sound for 12 seconds. And as you pointed out, Robert, until you can do that, you really have no idea what the word concentration means. The fact that you're able to accomplish things means you have some ability to focus, but focus and concentration are two different things. Thank you. All right. Now we'll hear what Swami Vivekananda has to
Brother,
say. Yes. Yes, Nira, go ahead.
and concentration different. You said
It-
focus and concentration are two different things. Focus and concentration.
Yes. What is the question? I'm sorry.
Could you explain, elaborate on that?
Well, when you're cooking a meal in the kitchen, you focus first on this, then you focus on this, then you focus on this, then you focus on this, and you have a pattern that you go through, and you know the pattern, and you're focused on the pattern and the series of steps you need to take. That's focus. You're focused on the task of preparing the meal, and it's one can become very, very adept at that kind of focus. It's a very different thing to try and hold a mantra, an image, a sound, or to concentrate on your breath for 12 seconds. When you're focusing on your task and the steps you need to go through to accomplish the task, it's just a few seconds here, a few seconds here, a few seconds here. Nothing, I mean, just Om Hari Om, 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 Om Hari Om. That was 12 seconds. Very few tasks require us to hold focus for 12 seconds to where it becomes concentration. Is that clear now?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else from anyone? It is thought which is the propelling force in us. Fill the mind with the highest thoughts. Hear them day after day. Think them month after month. Let me just say that again. It is thought which is the propelling force in us. Fill the mind with the highest thoughts. Hear them day after day. Think them month after month. That's why I recommended just casually read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. You will hear them day after day, and if you persist in reading the Gospel from beginning to end, you will hear them month after month. You'll think them month after month. Never mind failures. The Swami is so adamant about this. Never mind failures. They are quite natural. They are the beauty of life, these failures. What would life be without them? It would not be worth having if it were not for struggles. Isn't that beautiful? What a way to see the adventure of life. Of course, we're not going to attain perfection in a short period of time. Of course, we're going to struggle. Life would not be worth having if it were not for struggles. Where would be the poetry of life? Never mind the struggles, the mistakes. I never heard a cow tell a lie, but it is only a cow, never a man, never a man. What a potent example. I never heard a cow tell a lie, but it is only a cow, never a man. So never mind these failures, these little backslidings. Hold the ideal 1,000 times. And if you fail 1,000 times, you make the attempt once more. The ideal of man is to see God in everything. But if you cannot see him in everything, see him in one thing, in that thing which you like best, and then see him in another. So on you can go. There is infinite life before the soul. Take your time, and you will achieve your end. Now, there's a very practical example in the life of Sri Ramakrishna and his time at Dakshineshwar. One time, a simple village farmer from nearby came to see him. And he says, the farmer said, I hear that you can tell me how to experience God, how to know God. I hope so, because I find no attraction to any aspect of God. I've heard all of the stories of Krishna and Shiva and Vishnu and Rama and this and that. I've heard all these things, and none of it appeals to me in the least. What do I do? And Sri Ramakrishna asked him a simple question. What do you love? And the man thought a few moments and said, well, I raised up from it just being a kid, a goat. And I truly love my goat. And Sri Ramakrishna said, very well then, worship your goat. And the man knew the meaning of worship in the sense that Sri Ramakrishna was talking about. He meant formal worship. Prepare special food for it, decorate it, put garlands of flowers around its neck, and so on. This is what you love. Act as if you love it in that most formal, worshipful sense. After 3 years, the man came back to him, and tears were streaming down his face as he spoke to Sri Ramakrishna. And he said, now I understand. This isn't in the gospel, by the way. It's in the great master or the divine play, the Swami Saradananda's book about Sri Ramakrishna. So the Swami says, the Vivekananda says, the ideal of man is to see God in everything. But if you cannot see him in everything, see him in one thing, in the thing which you like best, and then see him in another. So that's the story, that's the example just given, is someone who did just exactly that. He saw him in his goat, And having seen him in the goat, the thing he liked best, he was then able to see him everywhere, which is why the tears were streaming down his face of ecstatic devotion when he said to Sri Ramakrishna, "Now I understand." There is infinite life before the soul. Take your time and you will achieve your end. Notice that the Swami is absolutely unqualified in that promise. So this is the answer to the question that was asked earlier. How do we know if the ideal is true? There is the infinite life before the soul. Take your time and you will achieve your end. The Swami promises that if you do these things that he's recommending, you will achieve that goal. And here's another quote. He, the one, who vibrates more quickly than mind, who attains to more speed than mind can ever do, whom even the gods reach not, nor thought grasps, he moving, everything moves. In him all exists. He is moving. He is also immovable. He is near and he is far. He is inside everything. He is outside everything, interpenetrating everything. Whoever sees in every being the same Atman, and whoever sees everything in that Atman, he never goes far from that Atman. When all life and the whole universe are seen in this Atman, then alone man has attained the secret. There is no more delusion for him. Where is any more misery for him who sees this oneness in the universe? Notice how this starts. He, the one, who vibrates more quickly than mind, who attains to more speed than mind can ever do. That's what happens when you start to practice prayer, contemplation, concentration, and practice meditation. You increase the vibration rate of your mind. When you reach the mind's limit, which is contained within time, space, and causation, within Maya, then Patanjali says, if you're persistent and you're valiant, that is, you don't yield to the temptation of being omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, then something happens to you and you go beyond mind. And because there's no experiencer there, there's no mind, there's only experience, it's inexpressible what samadhi, that nirvikalpa samadhi is. But seeing this oneness in the universe is savikalpa samadhi. It is something that happens to you before and is devoutly to be wished. This is when the Upanishad says, where is any more misery for him who sees this oneness in the universe? This is still an experience. This is still within the universe of time, space, and causation. But it is an experience that you can have by doing the practices that the Swami has talked about. So before we go on, we've got time. Are there any comments or questions about this huge promise that the Swami has made? First, he said, you will succeed, and then he defines it by quoting the Upanishad.
I'd like to share one thing.
Yes, Rob.
You cannot get it right until you have first got it wrong.
Exactly.
and for many of us, we have to get it wrong more than once, many times.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And that is life.
Yes, exactly. And it's the poetry of life, as the Swami said. I get it wrong and get it wrong. But what is, there are so many truths spoken in those wonderful Star Wars films. Yoda once says, the difference between the master and the apprentice is that the master has failed more times than the apprentice has even tried.
Yeah.
And you're so right, Robert. We must be willing to get it wrong. We must be willing to be valiant and not be daunted, because there is no magic bullet. The mind must be mastered. The ability to concentrate must be developed. Before the distractions of life are less consequential. It doesn't mean they don't occur, doesn't mean they don't distract you, but you find them easier to overcome. And slowly, they lose their power over you. We are very old beings, and we have very powerful samskaras and vasanas, what Jill Bolte Taylor calls neural loops, the neuroanatomist that studied this in her own life so carefully. They're powerful. And it isn't until we find that other aspect of ourselves, which can be called the witness, or the witness is the face in time, space, and causation of the Atman. So that's how we do this bit by bit. We discover the witness within ourselves, and we discover the witness has a whole other perspective. That's Brahman with attributes. Saguna Brahman. The Atman as something that you can experience as the witness.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, ma'am.
So I think part of the reason that the process becomes difficult is all our lives in the worldly realm, we are so rewarded for being right and chastised for being wrong. To
Yeah,
erase that and get a new paradigm it's a challenge.
it is indeed. You're so very right. That is exactly the left mind's way. Reward you for being right, chastise you for being wrong. What's wrong with you? What's the matter with you? Why can't you do this? Why aren't you getting this? This is the voice that speaks to us endlessly.
So,
Yes,
Brother Shankara,
yes, dear.
yes, and that is exactly why we were talking about having love and compassion for others, and also to develop love and compassion for oneself.
First, one has to develop love and compassion for oneself before one can truly be compassionate and forgiving to others.
Mhm. So if we practice that, then we would not be condescending or criticizing or fault finding.
Well, we just have to remember that judgment and chastisement and all that is just a way of keeping reality at arm's length. When we box it up, we judge it, and we think, now I know what that's all about. Then I don't have to think about it anymore. I have it in its box. The fact is, there is no lack. There is nothing wrong.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the key.
And as St. Thomas Aquinas says, you cannot be what God is not. And so all of these aspects of ourselves that are seen as mistakes are also part of God's being. You cannot be what God is not. So when we're being unforgiving, when we're being chastising, when we're being this and that, I mean, all you have to do is read the Old Testament of the Hebrew people and find this chastising God, this terrible aspect of God. Well, if you look at who that God was dealing with, you see that he was dealing with a bunch of rebellious slaves that had, through the intervention of this avatar Moses, had escaped from the tyranny of Egypt. But they were rebellious to start with, which is why they followed Moses. And they continued to be rebellious. Moses goes up on the mountain to get the instructions. While he's gone, they build a golden calf. They go back to worshiping the way they used to worship in Egypt. So we cannot put any limit on God. So even when we are being judgmental and so on, this is all aspects of the divine, but it's not what leads us to freedom and happiness. So we need to set those aspects aside and turn our concentration toward that which will give us freedom and happiness. First, within universe.
Brother Shankara,
Yes.
I'd like to give an example I think that might help to people to understand.
Good.
Okay. You get in your car and you're going from destination A to destination B.
Mhm.
And on the way there, you pass many things. And what we do as human beings, we say, oh, that's beautiful, that's good. And we go on and we see some, oh, that's bad, that's terrible. And we see the good and the bad, but we don't realize that we are putting that good and bad label on these things that we see. Everything that we see on that way, on this trip, should be, could be, is a learning experience.
Yes.
And if you just take it in and try not to evaluate it or start to evaluate less your experience as you go through life, that is progress that you will notice in your spiritual evolution.
Yes.
That's it.
Beautifully. Swami Prabhavananda put it this way: if we could just look at the things of the world objectively, and that's a wonderful pun, as objects, simply as objects, not evaluate them, as you said, not box them up. If we could just look at the things of the world objectively and see ourselves as the Atman, everything would pass by and be all right. This is the teaching of Swami Prabhavananda, my guru, and whose works are well worth your reading.
It's sort of like, do you ever look at you just look at the human body, or or just anything on this earth, and you just think, wow, these things are so strange. Like, here's someone walking on two legs, and then you see, like a four-legged animal walking, more parallel to the earth. It's just all so strange, and it reminds me of, different processes.
We lost you, Divya. We lost you again.
Hear me now? Hello?
We lost you again. It's all so strange.
It's all, oh no, I don't know what's happening with my phone. But basically, I was just saying, it's all so strange. You think of these different life forms on this earth, and you think of just these vast changes happening. And, sometimes I just even look at a human being and think, this form with eyes and arms and walking upright. And it
Yes,
just, it's a sense, I don't want to call it alienation, but it's also strange. And
it is.
it's a reminder that we're strangers,
It
but then
is.
no one is a stranger, but we're just in a strange land. And it's like, when you're born, and when I was a kid, I wasn't able to, I would always put the wrong shoes on the wrong feet. It's like you're just unfamiliar, like you're like born into this body, and you're just like, what is this thing? And I don't know how to move around. And it seems like most of life is like that.
Well, we're learning how to be more and more. As Swami Ranganathananda points out in his book, Divine Grace, to be fully human is to be fully divine. And so this incredible machine that we inhabit, which is a machine for translating the vibration that the Upanishad was just talking about here. There is nothing around us but vibration. Nothing. I can't say that strongly enough. Nothing. There is nothing around you but vibration. Your body itself is nothing but vibration. Somehow, this incredible machine converts that vibration into the experiences that we have and our ability to live those experiences. It's called Namarupa. This machine is able to assign name and form to the vibrations that we are and that surround us. and that is, if you want to know what I'm talking about from a physics point of view, just look up the work of Don Lincoln, D-O-N, Lincoln, like the President Lincoln, Don Lincoln. He's head of Fermilab and one of the principal researchers at the CERN laboratory in Switzerland. And he describes how there is nothing but fields of vibration. There is no thing, only fields of vibration. We are projecting and creating the universe that we experience. And we can transform that experience as it's spoken of in this Upanishad. And it is an adventure to make the effort and define for ourselves what we believe is right and what is wrong, and be willing to change that and abandon ideas that don't work as we become, each human being, its own sect. Because we are infinite beings. As Swami Vivekananda said, we are infinite dreamers dreaming finite dreams. Thank you, Divya, for remarking on how strange the world can be when we see it from that perspective.
I first learned to concentrate through art, taking a calligraphy class at UCLA. I became fascinated at how my mind would quiet, would stop thinking of anything else but what my hand was doing on the paper.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And then later on in studying meditation with the Buddhists, I realized that, like Ram Dass talks about being here now, that's what creating art is being here now.
Yes.
And when you reach the stillness, you yearn to be able to do that all the time.
Yes, yes. Exactly.
But it comes and it goes, but that stillness is divine.
It is indeed.
And it is filled with love.
Isn't it? Which is one of the surprising findings.
Yes.
Thank you, Beverly. And that's, I don't know, musicians and people in the sports world, they call that state being in the zone, where you're only just being and doing what you're doing, and there's nothing else. There's no thoughts. There's just the doing. And it is, as you pointed out, Beverly, it is a magical place. And when we discover it through the efforts that Haima was talking about very early on in our conversation today, when we persist in our ability to sit still for 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then 20 minutes, then 30 minutes, then 45 minutes, something truly remarkable happens. Something truly remarkable happens. And it's because we have discovered something that until we made the effort was completely opaque to us. And having discovered it, I'm going to read this quote from the Upanishad again. He, the one, who vibrates more quickly than mind, who attains to more speed than mind can ever do, whom even the gods reach not, nor thought grasps. He moving, everything moves. In him all exists. He is moving. He is also immovable. He is near and he is far. He is inside everything. He is outside everything, interpenetrating everything. Whoever sees in every being that same Atman, and whoever sees everything in that Atman, he never goes far from that Atman. When all life and the whole universe are seen in this Atman, then alone man has attained the secret. There is no more delusion for him. Where is any more misery for him who sees this oneness in the universe? And this, in Sanskrit, is called Savikalpa Samadhi, because it's all about the highest form of experience. Every one of us here this evening can attain this state. It's simply a matter of effort. And this is the great, and if you want to know what's really deeply meant by this, read Ranganathananda's book, Divine Grace. There is an element of grace in it. But the grace does not come from outside. The grace was always waiting for us inside. As Sri Ramakrishna says, the breeze of grace is always blowing. You have only to raise your sail. That is, make the self-effort. Then what happens is, having made the self-effort, that breeze of grace comes and blows you forward. And Sri Ramakrishna put it in such simple terms. He said, practice just a little and someone will come forward to help you. By that he means the divine that exists within us.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Katrina.
Hi, I have a question.
Please.
You said that when you increase your vibration, an increase in the vibration of the mind, you reach a point if you don't give in to omniscience, right?
Oh well, this is way down the road, Katrina. This is the final obstacle as described in chapter 4 of Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. When one becomes capable of this Savikalpa Samadhi and even more, a different kind of Samadhi, not the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which is indescribable, and it is the goal of complete independence of everything, which we don't even know what that means. We're so dependent. We have no idea what it really means. But this omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, one can share that with the divine because one is the divine. But for the ongoing soul, and Vivekananda describes this so beautifully and eloquently in chapter 4 of his book Raja Yoga, this is the final barrier. And if we remember the temptation of Christ, the temptation of Christ was to use that omnipotence, and and he said no. He said no. I won't turn the stone into bread. I won't jump from the tower and knowing that the angels will catch me. And if you read the life of Buddha, you find that he also was tempted in this way. And so, but it's a long way down the road for us. It's an interesting thing to contemplate. But right now, it's just enough to see this life as an adventure in which we're learning to master the mind.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, Katrina. Is there more that you wanted to ask about that? I interrupted you.
No, you answered it.
Okay.
Answered the question and what you were saying.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Okay. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I suppose part of the problem is that in worldly pursuits, we do get some sort of immediate feedback, whether it's positive or negative, maybe some instant gratification, whether we are doing a piece of art or music. If we do hit a wrong note and correct ourselves, I mean, when we hit the wrong note, we get some feedback. When we hit the right note, we get some feedback. Likewise, in art, we do some strokes, and as we change, we always get some feedback. Whereas in spiritual practice, it's a long, like you said, I mean, effort and patience become the key because we don't perceive anything.
Well, this is why we're so addicted to our distraction. This is why our distractions, we're so hooked on this, as you called it, immediate feedback. We're so hooked. And Krishna is so explicit to us in chapter 4. Oh, that's not yours. Don't be thinking it's yours. Don't have any attachment to it. Enjoy it in the moment, but don't think it's yours. And by all means, don't get attached to it. Rise higher, he says. Rise higher. Offer it all to me. Offer it all to me, all of that feedback. And even offer, Robert talked about what I characterized as being in the zone. Or maybe it was Divya. In any event, somebody talked about this phenomenon of being in the zone, of having no thought. Oh, it's Beverly. It was Beverly. Beverly was talking about that. Even that we offer up, because ultimately we are that which is moving and unmoving, that which is interpenetrating everything and is causing everything. And that's why St. Thomas Aquinas said, you cannot be what God is not.
I'd like to reply to something that Cheyenne said. You see, with music, with art, with anything we do in life, there is no such thing as a wrong note. There is no such thing as a wrong note in spirituality, because as you are progressing along this path, you will hit notes that maybe this society has said, that's not proper. But you had to hit that note to learn not to hit it the next time.
Mm-hmm.
So the next time, you will go and try something else. You might hit another wrong note, but eventually you're going to hit the right note.
Yes.
Not saying that you hit the wrong note in the beginning.
Right.
Because everything that we do, everything that we experience is on our particular path leading to our end, or to our destination.
Which is
Better
why
word.
the saints, you're so right, Robert, which is why the saints, without exception, as far as I've been able to find, without exception, say, as they look back, they treasure everything that happened because it's what brought them to the place where it finally tipped over into sainthood, just
Yes,
attached to nothing.
Yes, that wrong note is what got them there.
Exactly. Well, it's like that lovely quote from Yoda. The difference between the master and the apprentice is the master has failed more times than the apprentice has even tried.
And was he talking to his disciple Luke Skywalker when he said this?
I don't remember, dear. I really don't remember. He might have been. He might have been speaking in some forum or another. It's been a long time since I've seen those movies. But you can look it up if you like. I mean, you can Google it and find it.
I'll try to see what I get. Yeah, interesting that Yoda sounds a lot like yoga.
Oh,
And I
well,
think
that's very deliberate, very
yeah.
deliberate.
And that would have been Joseph Campbell who named him, right?
I don't think Joseph Campbell had that kind of influence on the script. I think he had an influence over Joseph Campbell was an advisor to George Lucas about what Lucas's intent should be, which was to create a new mythology of the conflict between good and evil, and how good through well, I won't try to tell the story of the Star Wars movies, but it's through the discipline of the Jedi that they're able to, and Yoda is one of the leaders of the Jedi.
As it relates to music and art, speaking of the wrong note,
Yes.
What is the wrong note today could be the right note tomorrow. And the reason why is we are evolving beings. And as far as the art is concerned, I'm an evolving musician. Notes that I play today are within my realm of understanding. If my realm of understanding moves to another level, then a whole new group of notes become available to me.
Yes.
And I discover them by by playing them.
Yes. And that's precisely the deep, deep meaning of that remark made by Pablo Casals. George Carlin, the comedian, and he was more than a comedian, he was a philosopher, interviewed Pablo Casals. Pablo Casals was one of the great cellists of the world. He was in his 80s or 90s, I think 90s, and he was still practicing 6 hours a day. And Carlin asked him, Maestro, why at your age, with your achievement, are you still practicing all this time every day? And Casals said, well, you know, I think I'm beginning to see a little improvement.
Right. The evolution never ends. There is never an end. You are, people call you a master, but you are never a master. You're a master today, and where you are tomorrow would make you an amateur the day before.
So this is what it's meant by being infinite. Infinite dreamers, dreaming finite dreams. And so this is why the Swami says it transforms. It transforms. If you begin to realize that you are that infinite dreamer, dreaming finite dreams.
And to expand a little on what you said about wrong notes transforming into right notes, Robert, I'm going to forward you a song through Brother Shankara. I don't have your email, but I'll send it to Brother Shankara and ask you to forward. It's called Northern Song by the Beatles.
Uh-huh.
And, don't you agree, Brother Shankara? That's wrong notes transforming into right notes somehow.
Oh, okay.
What's the title? Because Robert can look it up online.
Northern Song.
Northern Song, Robert. Anybody
Okay.
else who wants to look it up too. Thank you. And do send it to me. I will listen to it. But Robert can just look it up for himself.
Yeah.
Northern Song, Beatles.
Brother Shankara,
Yes.
I have never studied music, but as it pertains to some of the Indian classical melodies or ragas, they all have certain notes that fit into a particular raga or melody, and you're not supposed to use a note which it doesn't belong to as you're learning as an amateur. But when has reached a pinnacle of professional success, and when they choose a note that doesn't belong there, it is lauded as a great variation.
Yes.
So I don't know how to apply that in spiritual life, but
You'll know when you get there. You'll know when you get there. Just keep doing what seems right to you. You've had instruction from a teacher. You've done a lot of Shravana and a lot of Manana, and we've done a lot of Manana tonight together. You'll know when it's time for you to veer away from, simply because it'll happen spontaneously. And you will know.
What you said, Swayam, reminded me of also writing. Like when you first learn to write, they make you follow the rules of grammar. But then every great writer you know breaks the rule.
Yes. If you look at, there was a great poet, his work is still popular, E.E. Cummings. If you look at the work that he wrote when he was a student at Harvard, he wrote letter perfect. I mean, letter perfect. Different forms, odes, sonnets, the forms, sestinas, and so on. Later, having achieved that mastery, he goes to Paris and he writes some of the most, what he does is he begins to explore what happens when you make punctuation an active part of a poem rather than a passive part of a poem. And it is just amazing what he does. In Just Spring, just find his poem, In Just Spring, E.E. Cummings. It's, and then think in terms of what was just said, that the punctuation in the poem is an active part of the poem, not just like we think of a comma as a separation between this part of the thought and the next part of the thought. What happens if a comma is an active part of the
That's just called growth.
poem? Yeah, it certainly is.
It's like the Miltonic sentence.
Yes.
You know, like it's just these, it's a long, long sentence, but it's a poem.
Yes. Anything else from you wonderful people? Anything else? This is so sweet.
Yes, Brother Shankara,
Yes, Aaron.
do you think if Christ had, let's say, like given into the so-called last temptation, would that, like, you think be more of a detour? I mean, because it's not like if a holy one were to give into like this final temptation that they would be forever lost.
Well,
At least that's the way I see it.
Aaron, it's very hard for me to speculate about a being like Christ. I just don't know what would have happened if Christ had given it. I don't think we would know his name. I think if he could still be distracted by such trivia, I don't think we'd know his name. So he felt no need to demonstrate his power. And what did he say? He didn't condemn or judge. He just said, "Get behind me. Get thee behind me." So if we make the mistake, it's explained very succinctly by Patanjali what happens to us if we take that detour. We'll get trapped there for a while. That's what he says. I have no idea the truth of it. But he says we'll get trapped as a nature spirit. Anything else? Thanks, Aaron. It's an interesting thing to think about, but I just have no idea what would have happened. Om Hari Om. Let there be peace in outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let that infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. Go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Father and Mother Divine Being. Any final words from anyone? All right, dears. Until next time, thank you all. Thank you all for your participation and your being with us. So sweet to see you. Somebody put something in chat. I can't remember. What did it say?
It says, it's Rishikesh. It says, thank you, everyone. What a divine gathering this is. Good night. Take care.
Oh, thank you for reading it. And
Thank
thank you, Rishikesh. And yes, what a divine gathering this is. These infinite dreamers dreaming this finite dream. Good night. Until next time.
Hari Om.
Hari Om. Good night, everybody.
Bye.